The little girl was laughing. Not with her nanny. Not with the security staff. Not with anyone her father recognized. She was sitting on a wooden park bench in the bright afternoon sun, swinging her tiny legs while talking to an elderly woman whose clothes looked worn from years of hardship. And when the woman gently touched the child's cheek and whispered something, CEO Adrian Whitmore felt an uneasy chill crawl down his spine. Because for the first time in 3 years, he saw something impossible. His daughter was smiling the exact same way her mother used to smile. And then the old woman slowly looked up at him and said words that made his heart stop. "I used to be your wife's nurse." Before we begin this emotional journey, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Lifeline Corner if you believe kindness, forgiveness, and second chances can change lives. Your support helps bring more heartfelt stories to people around the world. The warm spring afternoon had started like any other. Adrian Whitmore, founder and CEO of one of the country's fastest-growing technology companies, rarely found time away from work. His life revolved around meetings, investors, business trips, and endless responsibilities. Yet every Sunday belonged to one person. His 4-year-old daughter, Clara. After losing his wife, Serena, 3 years earlier, Adrian had devoted himself entirely to raising their child. It wasn't easy. In fact, most days felt impossible. The world saw a successful billionaire. But behind closed doors, Adrian was simply a grieving husband trying to be both mother and father to a little girl who constantly asked questions he struggled to answer. Questions like why mommy couldn't come home. Questions like whether heaven had playgrounds. Questions like whether mommy could still hear bedtime stories. Every question felt like a knife twisting deeper into wounds that never fully healed. That Sunday afternoon, Adrian had taken Clara to Riverside Park. The sky was bright blue. Children ran across the grass. Families laughed together. Life seemed normal for everyone except him. He had stepped away briefly to answer an urgent business call while Clara played near the fountain under the watchful eye of security. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes. When he returned, Clara was gone. Panic struck instantly. His heart pounded. Security guards began searching. Then Adrian spotted her. She sat peacefully on a bench beneath a flowering tree. Beside her sat an elderly woman wearing faded clothes and carrying an old canvas bag. The woman looked poor. Perhaps homeless. Yet Clara appeared completely comfortable. As if she had known her forever. Adrian approached quickly. His protective instincts surged. Before he could speak, Clara turned toward him with excitement. "Daddy, this nice lady knows mommy." The words hit him like thunder. For a moment he couldn't breathe. The old woman slowly stood. Her silver hair moved gently in the breeze. Though age had etched deep lines across her face, her eyes remained kind and intelligent. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "I used to be your wife's nurse." Adrian froze. Very few people knew details about Serena's final months. The illness had progressed quickly. Privacy had become essential. Most of the medical staff had signed confidentiality agreements. And many had moved away after the tragedy. "Who are you?" Adrian asked quietly. The woman offered a faint smile. "My name is Eleanor Hayes." The name sounded familiar. Distantly familiar. Like a memory buried beneath years of grief. Then suddenly he remembered. Serena had mentioned a nurse named Eleanor countless times. A compassionate woman who sat beside her during difficult nights. A woman who brought comfort when fear became overwhelming. A woman Serena once described as an angel. Adrian stared at her. "But, where have you been?" Eleanor lowered her eyes. Life had clearly not been kind to her. The expensive confidence Adrian saw in executives and professionals was absent. Instead, he saw exhaustion. Years of struggle. Silent pain. I lost everything after leaving the hospital, she said softly. I never expected to see either of you again. Something about her honesty felt genuine. Clara gently slipped her tiny hand into Eleanor's. The gesture seemed natural. Instinctive. Almost as if some invisible connection existed between them. Adrian sat down slowly. For the next hour, Eleanor shared stories he had never heard before. Stories about Serena. Stories from the final months of her life. Stories Serena had hidden to protect her husband. Adrian listened in silence. He learned how Serena secretly spent time encouraging other patients. How she comforted frightened families despite battling her own illness. How she often talked about Adrian and Clara with endless love. And then Eleanor revealed something unexpected. Your wife wrote letters. Adrian blinked. What letters? Eleanor's expression trembled. 12 letters. The world seemed to stop. His pulse quickened. What are you talking about? Eleanor opened her old canvas bag. Inside rested a small weathered box. The edges were worn. The surface showed signs of age. Yet it had clearly been protected carefully. Almost reverently. With shaking hands, she lifted the lid. Inside lay a stack of sealed envelopes. Each envelope carried Serena's handwriting. Adrian recognized it immediately. The elegant curves. The neat lettering. The unmistakable signature. His vision blurred. 3 years. 3 years without seeing her handwriting. 3 years without hearing her voice. 3 years wishing for one more conversation. One more hug. One more chance. And now her words sat before him. Waiting. Eleanor wiped tears from her eyes. She asked me to keep them safe. Adrian stared at the box. His hands trembled. Why didn't I know? Pain crossed Eleanor's face. Because I couldn't find you. She explained how shortly after Serena passed away, Eleanor had suffered a devastating chain of personal tragedies. Her husband died unexpectedly. Medical bills consumed her savings. She lost her home. Eventually she moved from shelter to shelter while desperately trying to survive. The box never left her side. No matter how difficult life became. No matter how hungry she was. No matter where she slept. She protected those letters. Because she had made a promise. A promise to Serena. Adrian could hardly process what he was hearing. This woman had spent years struggling with poverty. Yet she had safeguarded the most precious gift he could ever imagine. Not for money. Not for recognition. Simply because she gave her word. For the first time, Adrian noticed the condition of her shoes. The worn fabric of her coat. The signs of sacrifice hidden in plain sight. And suddenly he felt ashamed. Ashamed that he had initially judged her appearance. Ashamed that he had assumed she was simply another stranger. Eleanor wasn't a stranger. She was someone who had protected a piece of his wife when nobody else could. As the afternoon sunlight filtered through the trees, Adrian carefully opened the first envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter addressed to him. The sight alone shattered the walls he had spent years building around his grief. Tears rolled down his face before he even finished the first sentence. The letter wasn't about sadness. It wasn't about illness. It wasn't about death. It was about life. Serena wrote about hope. About Clara's future. About finding happiness again. About refusing to let grief become a prison. Every word felt alive. Every sentence felt like hearing her voice. And for the first time in years, Adrian cried openly. Not as a CEO. Not as a businessman. Not as a wealthy public figure. But as a husband who missed the love of his life. The afternoon slowly faded toward evening. Clara rested against her father's shoulder. Eleanor sat quietly nearby. No one spoke much. Some moments were too sacred for words. Yet Adrian knew one thing with absolute certainty. This meeting wasn't an accident. Out of millions of people in the city, Clara had somehow wandered toward the one person carrying Serena's final gift. The odds were impossible. Yet somehow it happened. And deep inside, Adrian couldn't shake the feeling that Serena herself had guided that moment. What he didn't yet realize was that the letters contained far more than memories. They contained a final request. A request that would completely transform not only Adrian's life but Eleanor's as well. And before the journey ended, all three of them would discover that sometimes the greatest miracles arrive disguised as ordinary moments. Sometimes the people society overlooks become the very people who save us. And sometimes love continues working long after we believe it is gone. Before we continue toward the conclusion, please comment below, what would you do if you suddenly received a letter from someone you loved and lost years ago? Your answer may inspire someone reading through the comments today. Reply with Part 2, and I'll continue the story to the full emotional ending.